I'm Patricia Thaine, co-founder of Private AI, and this is the Data Frontier podcast. Here we explore the frontier of data innovation, where unstructured data meets real-world applications. Each episode brings together builders, engineers, data scientists, product leaders, and domain experts who are shaping the future of intelligence systems. From NLP and privacy to interoperability and AI-driven workflows, we unpack the tools, challenges, and breakthroughs, transforming raw data into smarter systems, faster insights, and better solutions. Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to have Derek Beaton here with us. Derek, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Of course, happy to. So currently right now, I'm the director of advanced analytics in the data science and advanced analytics unit at Unity Health Toronto. We're physically based at St. Michael's, so the downtown hospital. And our team works on basically custom bespoke data science and AI tools that we build to solve the problems of Unity Health Toronto. These are administrative, operational, clinical, you name it, we do it. We're in every corner of the organization across all our sites. And we really do focus on building something that helps solve our problems as opposed to more general solutions that might be for other places. And that's a core tenet of what we do is fix our own problems. Like, where can we do this and do this well and help out on any type of problem that we might see in healthcare?
Thank you so much for joining us to talk about these problems.
Thanks.
For a lot of these problems that you're solving, tell us a little bit about the types of data that you're using. I know that you recently migrated to Epic, for example. What has that been like? What is tapping into the various data systems like?
So I'll start with that transition that we went through for Epic patient record system, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the types of data, which the short spoiler is everything or anything is fair game. We went through a transition for a new patient record system a little over 1 year ago. And this was to the Epic system, which helped harmonize across all of our different sites. Prior to that, Providence, St. Mike, St. Joe's, completely different. This was true for largely almost anything that was part of the electronic record. So having a harmonized patient record system and a harmonized approach across the organization has now opened the door to much easier deployment, much easier work, common measurements, common reference points, whereas a long time ago, when we had to build, say, the same tools, just predicting how many people will show up at the emergency department, we had to build it two completely different ways. One for St. Mike's, one for St. Joe's. Now, we're a lot luckier. We can build it once, build anything like that, build it once and build it for the entire organization. The transition was fascinating. And this transition would have been fascinating regardless of patient record system we would have chosen. It's a really odd case for data science. It's almost like a start and a stop. You have one set of patient records, you have a certain system that actually goes into an archive, and then you start using a new system with a little bit of overlap. So when we learned this, we kind of had to pivot and think like, okay, how do we do this? How do we get things back online, knowing that there's a partial continuity of old data and new data? What tools have we built that are okay with a small amount of data in a new system? Which ones really do need a lot of historical context? That helped us prioritize and really think about a strategy of relaunching that was very helpful. So looking at some of the tools that are easier, kind of need within day data, start there. Things that need a bit more of like a patient history or operational history, they're going to have to wait just a little bit until data are actually aggregated and in place in the new system. So that was a fairly fascinating transition, kind of like a start and stop where it's like, oh, okay, well, there was data, there will be new data. But fortunately for us, we do have ways of like tying together archive systems and data warehouses with a new system. So we do have some level of continuity. Where that transition is also really fascinating is we basically just had to rebuild all of our pipelines from scratch. The same old measures might be called something different now. The actual technical feeds, HL7 messages might be different. So that was where a lot of the time was spent, rebuilding to get back to where we were. And about a year in, we're there. A lot of our big flagship high priority tools are back. And with that, all of the data feeds. So we can now work to, we hope, quickly scale and start expanding across the org with a bunch of new tools, a bunch of existing tools. Basically, the rebuild here was fundamental, like really actually building the foundation again of everything we do. Yeah. And then to go back to that spoiler, kind of data we work with, anything. It's actually kind of exciting, but also hard. We've got patient record data, or from the patient record system. We have operational data, imaging data. We have assignment tools that will take in schedules and help assign how people are going to work that day in the emergency department. So it's fair game. If someone here has a problem and data exists and we can solve that problem, we will use that data and we'll actually build something, which
That's
is
really
exciting,
refreshing.
but
That is
also
very
really hard.
yeah.
It's like, oh, great. Any data? Let's go.
One of the perks you mentioned is that you have Epic across all of these different systems now, so you don't have to rebuild the pipelines. Yeah. Does that also mean that data sharing across the organizations is more possible?
Oh, yeah. And data sharing was still in place because it's one organization. It was largely, I think, at that point, like a technical thing, trying to understand one site's system versus another site system. Yeah, it's way easier now. It's harmonized. It's the same thing. If you want to know length of stay, you only have to ask it in one way, one flavor, to actually get the same answer across all the different orgs instead of digging through the specialty systems of what we used to have. So yeah. It has made the technical side of this far, far easier.
Did the different sites used to have different nomenclature?
Well, yeah, because that's going to be part of like the actual technical infrastructure. If you purchase this patient record system or that medication system, like you're going to take some of the technical decisions that come with it, and you're going to have like slight variations in what these things mean. It is kind of great to not have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah. And what are some of the things that you had to reconcile in order to get it all working with Epic?
Looking at all of our old data first for all of the core tools that we wanted to relaunch, and then looking for the analogs or the exact matches in the new system. So that took quite a bit of time, but we put a lot of effort in for about 2 to 3 months once the new system came online, digging around, finding, that version of length of stay, or this version of a lab, or that version of a vital, whatever the measurement was, and tried to map them one-to-one to everything we had. And in some cases, it's not one-to-one. We had some lab measure in the old system, and we have 3 or 4 candidates, or maybe more in the new system. But we helped ourselves a lot by building basically data monitoring dashboards like out of the gate. So instead of waiting for enough data to build up and then find out if our models were working or whatever, and chasing down like, this version of length of stay is not the one we thought we had before. It might be one of these other 3. We had this dashboard to kind of help us map these things in a fairly simple way. Quantile plots, just kind of looking at the distribution. Are the numbers the same units? Are they the same kind of mins and maxes? That was a massive, massive time saver to think ahead and say like, all right, these are the things we think are the same. We're going to let enough data build up quickly, like in the first month or 2, and we will know, like, without a doubt, like, that is the same, or this is not the same. We got to go find the real source. So that was probably some of the more difficult things. It's going to figure out like, the new names, then hooking up that feed, and then in most cases it worked. Yeah, okay, that is the same thing. We're close enough. And in other cases, like, no, that is absolutely not the same thing. So we got to go dig again. But with that digging and that proactive monitoring, we were able to very quickly say, we know the things that we need for all of our tools going forward.
That's it's a very complicated migration process.
Yes. Yep. But like that monitoring that we did was not just valuable for us, but we were able to flag, we think something's up with this measure. And in some cases, like, oh yeah, okay, the unit is different. We're not used to measuring it in that unit versus the old units that we used to have. And we could help like flag these things down with other teams and have discussions about how things changed, have like nice pictures and graphs, say like, oh, look, this is, not quite the same as it was before. It was a really, really helpful tool in those early days as we were getting off the old system and into the new system.
You do have a blog post about O2 saturation and eosinophil as well as different values. So we'll link them in the show notes to showcase what kind of work you did in order to do that comparison for the data fidelity. It is really fascinating work. And then what's the next step? Once you have this data, what are some of the tools that you're most proud of sharing?
All of them. I can't pick a favorite. I do have a favorite. We can talk about it in a little bit. But where we started was in a lot of those measurements you see there were for helping us with a lot of our inpatient data. And that's where some of our bigger tools that took quite a bit of time to get back up, but for necessary reasons like ChartWatch, patient deterioration tool. We wanted to make sure that everything going into there is exactly as it used to be. Or if it's not, these monitoring tools like with the O2, it'll raise to us like, oh, this is different. If the data are different, we now know we might have to make a new model. So get ahead of any sort of model issues or deployment issues by looking at the very first thing, the data. Yeah, so that really helped us bring back a lot of those inpatient tools, in particular ChartWatch. We could chase down any discrepancies before we even started hooking models up. It's like, okay, yeah, those data aren't the same. What do we do about it? And there were a couple cases here, and I forget if it was O2 or one of the other measures where like, we got it wrong. We found out that, we just moved the decimal place and we're okay. Or we were looking at the wrong measure, but we didn't know of some of the other versions. We're like, hey, what's up with this? What's up with this? And by having these things in place, people could be like, oh yeah, that's not the right one. You need this other one instead.
And what does ChartWatch do?
So ChartWatch is one of our, I think, longest and oldest tools. ChartWatch is a deterioration tool. It will predict if someone will die or go to the ICU in the next 48 hours. And this is work that we've done collaboratively with Signal One for quite a few years now, after ChartWatch was originally developed here. And this tool will ingest data in fairly high frequency about every hour, where the data that it's getting, these measures that you see in that monitoring dashboard that we put together in the beginning, those are some things that go in. And the data will go into a model, and the model will provide a score, a risk score of the likelihood of deterioration. And if it crosses a certain threshold, it's a high alert. It means there's a suspicion that there's a likelihood of deterioration here. So with that high alert, information is sent back out with actual alerts to pagers, phones, emails, or somewhere in the patient record system to flag, in particular, high-risk patients, where there are interventions that are then applied on the clinical side. So the alerts themselves are paired with clinical work. It's not just hey, here's a prediction for you. And that's probably the most important part is here's a prediction and what do I do with it? And that's all on the intervention side. But the score itself for ChartWatch, the risk score is brought back for broader review inside the patient record system, something that we actually couldn't do before. We are able to bring this back into Epic at an hourly level. We had to do something a little different in older systems to accommodate less frequent updates, but we were always able to, and we have brought back the ability to make sure that whenever there is a patient that is flagged as high risk, send an alert, send an alarm, let the clinical teams know so that they can start taking action.
Does it explain why the alert was set off?
No. In fact, highly contentious issue. I know explainability is exciting sometimes. A personal take, even though I think I share this with a lot of other people these days. Explainability is great for the data scientists. It's really good for us to help diagnose a model like, what are these coefficients doing? Why might this model make this prediction? But there's a bridge that I don't think we've fully built yet. As a field, that explainability is not necessarily causality. And just because we have these particular data at this particular site on this particular day, and this measure and that measure seem to be driving a risk score, does not mean that that is the reason why a person is deteriorating. And this is true when you get to more general inference, because we could think of, and there are, other deterioration tools. If we brought in other deterioration tools and ran them side by side and we had explainability, they could have completely different measures. Or they might have the same measures, but come up with completely different explainability. And at that point, you have a real tension of, okay, well, what are we actually explaining? And in that particular case, the explainability really is only a utility for statisticians, machine learning folks, of why did the model get to that decision, not why does that patient receive that score? That is a very different thing, in part because we can think of a lot of these measures as proxies of other things as well. They're not always direct measures of some biological or physiological process. It may be something kind of downstream. So if certain labs are off, it doesn't necessarily mean that the lab itself is the source. There might be something else going on. So we largely do avoid explainability, but we do that by building a lot of trust and through education and training materials on how and why these tools work the way they do, and really digging into the performance levels and what like precision or recall might mean. Like, well, if we send this many alerts, we're going to be right this many times, and we're going to be wrong that many times. Where is your tolerance level for false alarms? And that's where we put a lot of our focus, is on really the kind of action at the end, as opposed to all the bits and pieces that go into the model.
Are the users
Models.
aware of what kind of data are being used to train the model?
Interesting question. Yes and no. A lot of users, as part of our working groups to help build these things and deploy, the ones we work very closely with as the build and deploy process, yes, but they're not the only users. So the rest of the users maybe know, but it's not that it's necessarily unavailable. Like, these are in key piece of documentation that come out of what we do. So data sheets, model fact sheets, like everything is in a place, and these are provided as part of training materials. But does that matter? Maybe some people don't care. They just want to know, how good is this? Is it good enough? What do I do when I get this information? Yeah, so I think a very fair answer is yes and no.
So some do, some don't.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
all could.
Mhm.
All could. Some do, some don't. Some probably care. Some probably don't care. And then, if I put my very statistical hat on, I sometimes don't always care, because I know we could have made other choices for different data or different ways of processing data that might produce a comparable or the same kinds of results. A lot of this is based on like the creativity and access of what you've got. We know we have certain types of data in certain ways that are important, informed by, in this case, clinical collaborators. But then it's fascinating, the choices that are made by data scientists with their expertise, their familiarity, what modeling approaches. You could end up with a completely different set of tools and different inputs, but the same results from two different data scientists at the same org, at different orgs. So sometimes I don't care. Does it work the way it's supposed to? And is it working safely and with expectations, not putting in like anything that might leak the answer in as input for output?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you able to share what kind of data are being ingested?
Very broadly, it's demographics, lab vitals, and some like basic clinical measures that are pretty routine. So things that are routinely collected that factor into deterioration. Emphasis
Okay,
on
I
like
see.
labs and vitals. Like it's basic stuff that are critically important from the
Mhm.
clinical side. These are the things that the clinical staff are going to focus on and want to monitor themselves. They're looking for when vitals drop or when labs change, maybe abruptly. And these are the same things that we are going to try to use when building models, and we do use in ChartWatch in particular.
And is it continuous? The monitoring, that is.
Hourly, high frequency, and
Okay.
that's a balance between um, kind of tolerance for how frequently someone might like need some answers or want some answers, and availability of data. Some things aren't measured hourly. They might be measured like every 4 hours or on a different cadence. So hypothetically, it could be continuous, but there's a more practical aspect of putting it on a schedule, knowing that certain data will be available at certain times, and when we would want to trigger alerts. I think maybe from this is just a bit of a conjecture, but from the user side, if this were continuous, it might be a little annoying. Um, if an alert can go off for any patient at literally any time, as opposed to building in the expectation that, okay, we're coming up on the hour, maybe there's going to be an alert. Or at minimum, there will be an update for all of my patients on the hour, as opposed to this patient now, that patient in 10 minutes, this patient in 13 minutes. That might be a little overwhelming.
Fair. And do the patients know that the system is being used?
Yes. So I think there is something on the Unity website, and this has been part of a number of initiatives, I think, with like patient and family council as well. It's actually something I can probably try to pull up a little bit later and share, that we do have this. Oh yeah, these are some of the tools that we use. There may be other literature or materials available, but at minimum, this is definitely available on our website.
It'd be interesting to see reactions of patients who know that there are these high-tech systems being used to track their well-being and whether they would choose one hospital over another as a result.
I actually think some of I will try to pull this up. I do believe some of the materials that we've put out on the website actually have some of that. Let me see if I can pull that up and share it. What I find interesting there, though, kind of a bit of a tangent, is we don't think about this or we used to not think about this. If we don't say that it's AI, if it's just a nice piece of software that's working that helps out, or if it's a simple rule, we tend to not think much about it, but it's a lot of the same. This is software that's helping something as part of a process, which is interesting. I think these days it is exciting and it feels very novel. AI and ML and statistical deployments everywhere, but some of the stuff's been around forever.
Yep.
or heuristics or on paper. There are algorithms that clinicians have been using for however long. And when we think about a lot of these tools, we don't think them any differently than a paper checklist of these things are being checked. And then that's the risk that comes out. It's just we've managed to automate some of this and turn it into a piece of software instead of a manual step. So even if this wasn't software, these things exist. There are other deterioration checklists that have been around for a long time, or other checklists on different types of clinical disorders, diseases, where we've had algorithms for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
They just kind of hide.
A lot of things people would want to do, they could have done 10 years ago with the right data.
Yes, yeah. Basically, healthcare is a little bit behind in terms of the tech when it comes to high frequency data feeds compared to a lot of other fields. It's all here now. It's very exciting. You can turn all these paper instruments that have been around for decades into a piece of software. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. So, about other tools you've been building, you have EDRN. Can you tell us a bit about that one?
Yeah. So this is possibly one of our actual oldest tools, and it's about to get a big expansion. We built a tool called the EDRN, or Nurse Assignment Tool. And this is a tool in the emergency department that will take into account the schedule, who's on that day, the qualifications, and the past assignment of roles of RNs to different zones. Actually, we're expanding. So more roles than just RN, but I'll probably just say RN because the EDRN name is just embedded in my head for years. What it will do is assign automatically RNs to different zones in the emergency department. So you're going to work here today, and these are the people you're going to work with in this zone, yellow zone, green zone, or acute, AB, whatever it is. And it does so optimally. And it optimizes over who's here on the schedule. Who have you worked with in the past? What zones have you worked in the past? And what are the qualifications? And it can do that in an optimal way because we know the histories. And one of the two driving motivators of how this tool came about. A person trying to do that would take a really long time. Lead nurses or other operational folks too would have to figure out, you're moving puzzle pieces around. This person works with this person, or you kind of fall into a cadence of just repeat it over and over again. So one driving factor on one side, the person that has to make this assignment has a lot of effort and time to put into it. On the other side, you could take shortcuts and just repeat the assignment week over week or day over day, whatever you need to. And then the staff might be like, well, I've worked that zone and I've worked with this person for 6 months now. I want a bit of rotation. I want some different experiences. So the two big factors were it's taken a lot of time for a person to do this, and people want a bit of variety because it actually helps with skill building and moving towards other qualifications. And this tool did exactly that. People were way happier and satisfied with the variety of assignments they would get. And most importantly, it went from 2.5 person hours of time to 3 minutes. You just put the schedule in and hit a button and there you go. And even the 3 minutes actually is building in some time for some manual changes. If you know someone might be calling in sick, you can take them off and then it'll do it again. So 3 minutes to get an optimal schedule and make some manual adjustments as opposed to 2.5 hours and everybody's really happy. It's a pretty cool tool. It's been in the St. Mike's ED for a long time, a really long time. And we are bringing it over to the St. Joe's ED in February. We are launching a whole new one. We've overhauled it so that it's actually going to be harmonized underneath. But this is pretty exciting. We get to expand across both of our emergency departments. This one, it is also interesting in that, like, there's no traditional data pipeline yet, maybe someday, but there are scheduling software, or sometimes schedules are also created manually. As long as a schedule is in a very particular format, it can go into this tool. Now, there are a variety of scheduling tools and processes that exist across the organization, but the longer term goal is, all right, how do we find the more common or most common or harmonized way of structuring schedule data as output? And then it should be very easy for us. Make a little connector, API call, or as long as it's in a shared drive and it's the same format, we can automate this instead of someone putting the schedule into the tool. But that last little hurdle of taking away that step is just simply because of the variety of tools that still exist outside of the EPR, the patient record system. So there's still, in healthcare or just in hospital settings, a lot of different pieces of software. Some are preference driven or custom made for certain types of roles or processes that really are suited for different groups. So no data pipeline. People are unfortunately the data pipeline. They've got to make sure it's in the right format to go in.
Got it. So if you wanted to expand this to do things like determine outcomes for matches, or if you wanted to integrate information about patients to be able to match them better to different specialties.
Yes, that is where the patient record system comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. We know that there are some requests that have come in, and we see another level of expansion here, which is more broad assignment, which would take into account patient acuity. In fact, tying a couple things together here, we know kind of an interesting knock-on effect of ChartWatch. And we heard this a while ago as part of qualitative feedback. When doing assignments that day or that shift, nurses do not want to have more than a certain number of high-risk patients. So like ChartWatch is being used as basically an acuity tool to help balance assignment. And on our journey towards expanding and scaling up this assignment product, something like that, like actual acuity or risk of something, could be automatically input to help optimize. Yeah, don't give this one nurse all of the high-risk patients today. Or something that seems fairly obvious, but make sure that assignment is actually geographically located close to one another. You don't want to have patients on different floors or down the hall. Can you do something that actually optimizes for some locality? So we could, as we scale some of this, take into account some like clinical level or other operational data that we get from the patient record system. And we can look now at outcomes. That would just be on our side to try to connect what do we see for outcomes that day in the emergency department, which would come from the patient record system, and back to like, all right, what kind of assignments were optimal as we look at these outcomes. It's possible because we get any and all types of data that we need to actually answer those questions.
I guess your wish list for the kind of infrastructure to enable this more easily would be a more cohesive, unified system for scheduling.
Exactly. Yes. I would love to see that, because that would also allow us to scale some of the other tools we built a long time ago. We have scheduling tools as well. This is an assignment tool, but we had a bunch of scheduling tools in place for resident scheduling. Let's take into account vacations, experience, qualifications, all that kind of stuff. But again, the limiting factor was, okay, we can't build it for everybody because you're all using a different system. Big hope someday. Common system, or at least common structure of data. Something that allows us to work with something that is standardized would then help us on direct feeds to these tools, or embedding some of the tools we have developed in the past into these systems as well. Optimal scheduling and optimal assignment is not too far off, but it's a dream. It would be ideal to have some of that.
So the infrastructure is really what is preventing scalability. And anything with electronic medical records, that's going to be able to scale.
Yes. Anything that is not digital, it's going to be tough. You got to digitize somehow. So some schedules, you'll see it on paper, but it gets translated back. Or when you have a variety of ways in which things are represented, or different types of systems you have to access. Those are really the limiting factors. And there has been a good and strong push on the side of like patient record systems and imaging systems PACS for interoperability and common standards and nomenclature. I think we need to see this a lot more in other tools that we don't really think of, like scheduling tools. It'd be great if there was a standard like data structure and nomenclature to go with schedules. Because these are critical pieces of healthcare environments as well. Who's working today is just as important as a patient record or an image. But we tend to not think of like interoperability for those types of tools as much. But I kind of hope we do someday.
Are there any other kinds of data that you think are overlooked for interoperability?
Oh, great question. Oh, really great question. Oh, yes. Uh, yeah. Documentation.
What do you mean?
Policies and procedures. Should it be in a PDF? Should it be in a doc? Should it have tables in it? Should it have this font or that font? Documentation would benefit from standards to help establish interoperability, because you might have policies or procedures or other types of documentation that you want to pull down from another source. And it would be great if you could automatically ingest, reformat, or populate into local systems or share in a better way. Policies, procedures, documents, all sorts of stuff like that actually would benefit in much the same way, instead of either trying to search through on your own or build tools to try to get through that.
Can you give an example of such a policy and procedure?
Yeah. And some of these are just kind of like legacy. It's usually when you format a document, some people just choose to use slightly different formats or like a table to keep things structured in a certain way. It's better if you don't. If you just use a very particular singular format. I don't know what that ideal format would be, but it would be nice if more unstructured data, or what we perceive as unstructured data, text type things, had a bit more structure, at least guidance and some rules on use these things, don't use these things. Here's how you do it. It would make a lot of these unstructured and text problems, I think, so much easier to deal
Mhm.
with.
Do you mean policies like this is what you need to follow if XYZ happens in the hospital, for example?
Yeah, or simple policies, and we help build a tool on this, like vacation policy or sick policy, like simple things that everybody needs would really benefit from. Like, we're going to only write documents in one way. But that is a unrealistic dream. I don't think I can get the whole world to agree to one format of documents.
Well, maybe one organization, one format of
Yes.
documents.
Yeah, no, that's much easier, but it'd be great because a lot of these things are the same across different places, especially when it's, documentation about models, like model fact sheets. There are a variety of formats and structures. We have one that we adapted from existing templates, but even at like this model level for like what every organization is doing, if we all had, say, the same format,
Mhm.
we could in a way leverage some interoperability of like aggregating, oh, these are all the different types of assignment tools that exist at different orgs, or deterioration tools that exist at different orgs, and just automatically process that instead of kind of like asking around and then people kind of chugging through these and figuring it out and then basically pulling that data back together. Small things like that would be, I think, absolutely huge and lead to a lot more interoperability.
Great. So when you are feeding in these data to EDRN, for example, these are fairly structured data.
Mhm.
How clean are these data in the first place?
Relatively. And that's really part of critical aspects of change management and product deployment. Part of our team, we have clinical informatics specialists and product managers and a product development team. A lot of people that spend a lot of time on, here's how the tool works, and here's how we're going to help you get it into your workflow, or here's how we can do this and help you change some of your workflow. So there is the expectation and training that's built in of, oh, it needs to be in this format. And once it's in this format, you're good to go. But that is a lot of effort that's put in on the training side. So for tools like that, if it's not in the right format, it just does not work. So there's almost an instant feedback mechanism of, well, I can't do anything with that. But there's a much longer process, necessary process, of making sure people know how to use the tools, or why we're also using the tools and what the tools are expecting.
Do you find anybody expects magic of why can't it just understand it in the format I want to write it in?
Here, no. And I think that actually probably speaks a lot to Unity's maturity on this. Like, we've been a team for a while. We've been doing this work for a while. So there's a really good understanding across the entire organization that AI, ML, optimization tools, all this stuff can feel a bit magic, but everyone recognizes just how much effort goes into like that little bit of magic you don't see that is just a lot of like really hard work. Here, we're actually fairly, I think, fortunate. No, there is no expectation of magic. People know how hard this is and how valuable some of that work is to make sure you get the actual tool that does what it needs to do for you in your everyday life. But yeah, people think there are some magic things, lots of other places, but we're really lucky we don't face it nearly as often, I think. But that is because of just how much time we spent educating, training, working with people, and our long history now of building and deploying all sorts of tools throughout this organization.
Do any of your deployed systems, like your imaging tool, any of these tools use unstructured data rather than structured data?
Yeah, there are two big categories of where we have what we would call unstructured data. One is on the imaging side. So we've built some tools for the emergency department that help recognize brain bleeds in all head CTs. And those are images that come out of the imaging system. What's kind of nice about that is they feel unstructured, but imaging data actually somewhat has a bit of structure to it. So we know the name of the protocol we're looking for. We know parameters in the metadata or the structure of how many pixels there are, things that are appropriate. There is some structure to help us. And then when you get the actual images, it's a bit of unstructuredness that go through some processing pipelines to help give it structure so that everything is in the same format. So we do work with semi-unstructured or partially unstructured data over on the imaging side. And then I alluded to this a little bit on the tech side, documents. So we built an HR chatbot. The point of it is all of the people policies and I think workplace health and safety policies at this organization are in a bunch of PDFs. PDFs of varying length. That's couple hundred, maybe more than a couple hundred. And it's hard to find answers. Like if you don't know, if someone on my team asks me, what is the vacation policy or what is the sick policy? I'm like, let me go ask someone or let me go find that PDF and then let's try to figure it out. And when we don't quite understand, we'll go ask someone else. We work together with HR to develop a tool that ingests all of these things and is a generative AI tool that will take in all of these PDFs on the website and we'll do two things. When you ask a question, it will give you a summarization to the best of its ability, or sometimes just not answer if it can't, about that. So a condensed version of information from sources. And importantly, right after the answer, it gives you all of the sources down to the page on the specific document where you're very likely to find that information, because there is some information that might seem similar or is actually partially duplicated across places where you really want to know where does this come from so that you can go, once you have a summary of this information, you go look at the source yourself as well and go, okay, I see. Now I understand. And that's probably the most unstructured data that we're working with because we depend on scooping in new PDFs from a place on the website or in the back end of the website. And we check it every day for an update because there can be updates to policies or new policies. And as soon as something's updated, we run our system again, make sure the chatbot model is actually up to date. But we're sitting there monitoring for changes to any of the PDFs that sit there. Like I noted before, the PDFs, some of them are older, some of them are newer, different structure, some have tables. So it was a really interesting challenge of like, how do we just get a bunch of PDFs and get some answers out of them? So a fascinating example of like it's a document digestion problem, it's a search problem, and it's a summary problem. And that was something that we launched a few months ago, I think. I want to say in August, we launched this tool. We've been building it for a while because, this is a really hard problem.
And how do you get it to not answer when it doesn't know?
Oh, that is some fantastic work by the data scientists on our team with a lot of like very careful set of both prompts on one side to make sure that there is some intent detection, but also on the other side, we have the sources. So with like retrieval augmented generation, like we have the documents. So there needs to be enough of a match between what are you asking and what does this tool actually know about? And in some cases, like with the intent detection, it'll just be like, no, I can't answer that. I know I'm not allowed to answer that. And in other cases, it might think a bit and go, I don't really have a great answer, or I can't find a source, or it will like kind of give like a maybe answer to some possible sources. If what you're asking is a close enough match to the actual documentation. And that was, in our opinion, the most important part. What we've managed to build, we think, is a core foundation for scaling this idea to completely different domains. If we want to roll out something clinically, it is utterly vital that we know where the information is coming from and it can be validated and it stays kind of within the knowledge base that it has and not try to go outside the knowledge base. So it's a mixture of techniques in the beginning, like making sure there's intent detection. Are you asking the right questions or not? Or are you just trying to trick the tool? And on the other end, which is the core knowledge that it has. And those are the documents that we ingest, the specific documents that we ingest.
Are there any tools that you can showcase to us today?
Yeah. I'll show my personal favorite, the emergency department wait times tool. If you go to St. Mike's, you will see this on a TV screen.
That's
So
very cool.
yeah, this one is very exciting. You can see it actually switches between languages, and why it's one of my personal favorites is that we worked really closely with people in the emergency department. We worked with patient family council, patients to figure out what is it we need to know and display back to everybody, because something like this, seemingly simple underneath and on top, it's a very simple forecasting model, has a lot of impact on how people basically feel, or just basic knowledge that is really important for both patients and staff. Like how busy is it? How long is it possibly going to be? Those are questions that can add to like tension or stress. And when you have this kind of a tool, it eases that. It gives that level of expectation. You know what to expect. It's one of my favorites. We worked really closely with a lot of people on this, and it's our only patient-facing tool at this time. I don't think it's going to be our only, but it's our only right now, which is one of the reasons why it's my personal favorite.
That is very cool. How do you get information like how many patients and how many critical patients there are?
Just whatever is marked in the patient record system. We know how to find this information. So it's all the same stuff remapped as part of our transition. This is coming from some hard work of, we used to know where it was in the old system, find out where it is in the new system. That's what we did. And then we relaunched with this. So this information is there in real time in our patient record system.
So theoretically, any of your sites running Epic could just integrate this.
Correct. Yes.
Is it available for other hospital systems in Ontario?
No, but actually, so interestingly, a lot of hospitals have built their own. Basically, at about the same time, a bunch of hospitals like, we all need to build this tool. They're all built in a little differently, and the display part here is probably you're going to see that same kind of information almost anywhere else. What's probably going to be different or required to be different underneath is the model for forecasting. So our model is really adapted to, at least for now, the St. Mike's ED.
What does that mean? Does that mean based on the kinds of doctors that you have?
Oh, no, just trained on years of wait time data from St. Mike's,
Okay.
taking into account some seasonal factors that are definitely probably more seen at one site versus another.
Uh-huh.
But we do suspect that this is, and we're going to give it a try soon, but we do suspect that this is actually going to be a fairly easy scale over to St. Joe's, where we have another emergency department. But yeah, the model that's underneath is a bit specific because of the data that we use, which is our own data. And some of the intent of what people wanted to display here is very much driven by decisions collectively here. The wait time you see for us is an aim to have 90% coverage. 90% of people who look at that number when they arrive will fall under that number. Other hospitals use an 80% threshold or something different because that's really what staff, patients want. So there's a kind of slight or maybe subtle things that you would want to change from organization to organization to organization that are really for that organization's preferences. So our model and how we're targeting that number. We want 90, other places want 80. Easy change, but I think something like this is the type of tool that really should be driven by individual organizations. Let it be for your org, your patients, your staff. This should really be driven by what those people need, not necessarily one generic solution across all of Ontario.
So I think that there's an Ontario site where you can look at the wait times in different hospitals.
Yes, that is kind of new. So we were digging into that. I think that's So this is interesting. So some hospitals do have some public information. Their displays are up on their websites, but that aggregate one, I think, is just some person who put it together based on whatever was available. We recently came across that because when we first built this, nothing like that existed. But someone kind of flagged for us, like, oh, hey, look, we can see a whole bunch of hospitals. Oh, wow. And that's actually where I think interoperability is going to come right back in. Wouldn't it be cool if we all were sharing some of this, so the same information in the same way, so that there can be an aggregate estimate provincially or regionally or locally, nationally. But if I'm not mistaken, that website is just a person who's like, oh, all of these ones are online. I'm going to scrape from that hospital and that hospital and that hospital and try to give best approximation of wait times in real-ish time. But there is a separate analog. I believe the Ministry or Ontario Health maintains a more historical version that does get updated every once in a while, where you can see every hospital's wait time. But it's not the wait time right now. It's the kind of maybe quarterly or year, some kind of average wait time.
I wonder if we looked at it now, whether it would match your numbers.
Our numbers, no, because ours are not public. This is a tool semi-public. It's on TV screens, but our tool is not on our website yet. There's interest in bringing it to the website.
Here's one. There's drwatch.ca.
Yeah, I think that's just some person who put this together, which is, I don't know who that is. Like, great job. Some of the other orgs are putting up their display publicly. I think Sunnybrook has a landing page.
Okay, so it is basically a feed from those hospitals.
Yeah, I think some very inspired and clever person actually just pulled these together.
That's very nice of them.
Yes, it is.
So is there a feedback loop for the tool itself based on accuracy
of the wait?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. That would actually be fairly hard to measure. There would need to be some sort of intervention or action or something that people could use from that. Except maybe if the number looks very high, maybe there's some sort of behavioral change. But for this one, I don't think there should be. But it's a great question of whether there actually is or not.
Yeah. Like, do you measure if X patient came in, we're told it's this wait time? How do you get that it's actually within the 90th?
Oh, we monitor the tool behind the scenes to make sure that we're up to expectations at the aggregate level. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sounds good. But no feedback loop.
I don't think so. That's a really good and interesting and possibly hard question. I think tools like an ED wait time, something that is more of informational, may not have, unless there is a way to truly act on it. So to actively bring the time down or up. No, I think informational tools are probably outside of feedback loops, but I'm sure there's some possible way of making changes.
Is there a way to determine whether your predictive systems contribute to positive patient outcomes?
Oh, yeah. So all our tools, when we build them or when a new project comes in, one of the most critical things we do at project intake is ask a very important question. What is this going to change? Mortality, money, time, what is it? When we get the idea of what, we start digging into like, okay, where are we going to measure this and by how much? So then we start putting together a more formal evaluation plan. And a lot of our evaluation plans will follow a design that is largely like pseudo-experimental. In a lot of cases, we are limited in pre-post, but we'll do whatever we can statistically to be rigorous on pre-post analyses, where, causality might be a little tricky there, but we are at least looking at an intervention point, largely from like an interrupted time series perspective. With like counterfactuals. But in other cases, we might have a bit of, say, possible like control data. Like with ChartWatch, there are other units it wasn't deployed or other parts of the org it's not deployed. It allows us to compare. Our hemodialysis risk prediction tool, it's kind of the same thing. We can look at the two different emergency departments and like volumes that go there. So we'll set up almost akin to like trials, but like complex evaluation plans, figure out how long we need to take. Is it a certain number of data points, which will then translate to time? So a lot of our tools, it might take 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Like, how long do we need to know before we can actually conclusively answer like, yes, this seemed to work, or bring that needle down or not? So we do that. That being said, I think in a lot of cases, or probably actually, no, let me clarify that. All cases, it's not the tools. or it's not the tools alone. It is really the intervention and what is paired with it, how people make use of these tools. So there's a big behavioral change that happens with everything that is deployed. And that's going to be a big part of why, or potentially like the causal effect of we are seeing a change here, which is interesting. Like, is it a specific tool that we developed, or could we have swapped in a slightly different tool as long as we had a similar behavioral intervention component to go with it? So yes and no. We track these things. We set up our evaluations in a fairly rigorous way, but the tools alone don't really lead to change. It is that willingness and the effort put in from the people who want to use the tools, the time we do for change management and training, bundling everything together, and then thoroughly evaluating, rigorously evaluating is how we can track if, at least in a point in time, which is the deployment time when it's in people's hands, if we are seeing a change. That being said, there could be a lot of like complex other external factors, but we try to account for whatever we can, other system changes and stuff, but largely we do make sure we design evaluation frameworks from the get-go.
I guess it's based on historical aggregate data about outcomes, and then you compare.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Derek, thank you so much. This
Thank
has
you.
been really, really interesting.
Fantastic.
Thanks for listening. Before you go, a quick note about the company I co-founded, Private AI. We help organizations use their data safely so they can build compliant AI products, share data securely, and extract insights without the regulatory headaches. If PII, PHI, or PCI data are standing between you and your next innovation, visit private-ai.com. See you next time on the Data Frontier.